Welcome to Brain Info Live, for everyone in the brain health community. Brain Info Live is about hope, health, support, education, and you. Whether you're living with Alzheimer's or a caregiver, family member, or loved one of someone who is, Brain Info Live is here for everybody.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Brain Info Live 2023. Let me start off by saying this is our first episode of 2023. Happy New Year. This is also our 20th episode. It's hard to believe. It's 20 episodes. My name is Mike Kincaid. I am the Director of Diversity and Recruitment for the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here in Boston, Massachusetts. I also have had the joy, honor, and great thrill of being the host of this amazing show, Brain Info Live. And today's program is about the science of memory. We're gonna talk about memory. And I know a lot of our episodes, we've talked about memory loss, we've talked about dementia, we've talked about Alzheimer's, but today I've got a dear friend, and we're going to talk about the science of memory. And in preparing for today's show, I've been thinking about that. It's like, you don't think, this is going to sound crazy, walk with me. You don't think about memory. You think about the lack of memory. You think about the problems with memory, but you don't necessarily think about memory. What is memory? How does it work? What happens when it's not working? Things like that. So Andrew is going to be hanging out with us. And as always, this is it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. So if you've got some questions, you do the secret squirrel thing. You hit the chat button up there. You fire out your questions if you want to be anonymous, or if you want to let us know who you are. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But as always, you got to start the new year out lively, moving, kicking it. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's kick it with J. Lou, Mr. John Lewis from Atlanta, GA. And let's get the body moving. Let's get going. Let's get this party started. So, Alexa, let's bring in J. Lou.
Hey, I'm J. Lou, your fitness guru. I want to welcome you to Brain Info Live. Today, I need you to grab a stick, a broom, whatever you have around the house, because this is going to keep you sculpted, and we're going to be doing details for the core and upper body. So in 5 seconds, I need you to get ready to get started. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, I need your stick in front, sit in a good base, arms out in front, and let's go. Boom. I want hips, and I'm gonna raise up on my toes. Keep it going. Hips. Now we're gonna go in the front. Head straight, and I want you to look up. Look up, and good. Now go all the way out in front, hands on top, and I want a light squat, but keep your arms straight so we can get a good stretch. Here we go. Head up, there you go. Keep that back straight. We're stretching those lats, we're working on those glutes, and we're working on that lower back. So let's go. And good. Now to the side, elbow up, hand on the hip, feet straight, head up, and you stretch. See how my elbow stays up? There you go. Come on. There you go. And good. Switch sides. Elbow up, hand on hip, head up, and let's go. There you go. Come on. And 5. Good. Now, when I go with my right hand, I'm gonna push my butt back and elongate. You ready? And let's go. And remember, we're gonna keep that head up today. There you go. Push that butt back. Elongate that upper body. Those lats. And good. Other side. Close. Head up. And extend. There we go. 4 and 5. Good. All right. I want your hands straight. We're gonna go a little bit wider and turn your toes out. Head up, and I want a light squat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job. Hands out in front, level, head up, toes out, butt back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Great job. Hand out at the angle, butt back, head up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Straight down, and let's go. 1, 2, head up, 3, 4, and 5. Great job. Now we're gonna go to the upper body. Hands wide, sit down, and we're just doing 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our next one, angle. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More of an angle. Ready? And go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More of an angle, not right over the head. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right over the head and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now we're gonna go at an angle. Sit down and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job. Other side and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Behind the head, chest up, head up, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In front, head up, sit down, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job. Now, we're gonna tilt. I want you to come towards your navel. And let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're gonna come across my chest. Tilt forward, and let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're gonna come right at the neck. Tilt forward, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're gonna come right at the eyes. Don't you hit yourself now. Ready? And go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're gonna come right overhead. Tilt forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job. Now, I'm gonna do a curl, but my elbows are in front. Sit down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job. All right. For triceps, elbows in and you extend. You ready? And go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wider. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more. Ready? And let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great job, great job. Remember, it's all about the details. I'm your boy J. Lou, your fitness guru, and see you later, bye.
Oh my goodness. See you later. Bye. Yeah, you know, and something I forgot to say, and I'm going to say this for those who watch this again, you know, go at your own pace because J. Lou can be a little bit, you know, a little bit fast. So go at your own pace. And speaking of which, John Lewis, this is a reminder for some of the regular viewers of our show. You know that John Lewis is in the process of getting a fitness show. I believe it's going to be on the Roku channel. So I'm just going to keep updating everybody, because as soon as that happens, hey, we'll have ourselves a giant watch party. And anybody who's got access to Roku television, we'll put on our J-Lu outfit and we'll just work out. Just work out with J-Lu. So it's going to be fun. So now, coming up, as always, we have our video segment. And today's video is courtesy of it's excerpts from Hank Green's Crash Course series titled Remembering and Forgetting. Now, I haven't watched this one in advance, so I'm curious to see what's going to happen. So as I always say, let's go to the videotape.
It was midnight when Bernice got off work. She was exhausted after a long and terrible day and just wanted to get home to a hot bath. She was driving down the street, flipping through radio stations, when she pulled up to a stop sign and saw something weird. A shadowy figure ran up to an idling fruit truck, pushed the delivery man down, grabbed a crate of bananas, and ran off around the corner. Bernice was pretty shaken up, but she made sure the driver was okay, and then she called the police, describing the thief as a pale, lanky man wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap. She gave the cops her information, and then she went home. A couple of days later, the police asked her to come down to the station to identify a potential thief, a guy who more or less matched her description and was found eating a banana early that morning near the scene of the crime. Although the guy professed innocence, Bernice said it was him, and they locked him up. But at the trial, the defense called a memory expert to the stand, and soon after that, the suspect walked. Today's lesson may not make you an expert worthy of the witness stand, but by the time we're done, you'll understand a lot more about how we retrieve memories we think we've stored, and why the accused banana thief was set free. We're all constantly retrieving memories throughout the day. You're remembering where you parked your car, or if you fed the cat, or called your mom because it's her birthday. You'll remember from last week that while our implicit memories, like how to talk and ride a bike, are dealt with on a mostly automatic and non-conscious level, our explicit memories, the chronicles of our personal experiences and general knowledge, often require conscious, effortful work. Bernice had to notice, encode, store, and later consciously retrieve details about the crime she witnessed. What color was the guy's jacket? What did he look like? What did he steal? And where did he run? It takes a lot of work to retrieve memories from long-term storage, and the truth is, a lot can go wrong along the way. In order to understand all of the many fascinating ways you forget things, we need to talk more about how we remember. Our memories are not like books in the library of your mind. You don't just pluck a neatly packaged memory right off the shelf about where you left your phone or the hair color of a fruit thief. Instead, your memories are more like the spider webs in the dank catacombs of your mind, a series of interconnected associations that link all sorts of diverse things as bits of information get stuck to other bits of information. Like, maybe Bernice remembers that the night of the crime was chilly with a full moon, and that Beyonce was on the radio, and the fruit truck had plates from California, which is where her grandfather lives. All those bits of information in the web of memory, the weather, the song, the plates, can serve as retrieval cues, kind of like a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to a particular memory. The more retrieval cues you inadvertently or intentionally build along the way, the better you can backtrack and find the memory you're looking for. This way of activating associations non-consciously is called priming, sometimes called memoryless memory. It's how invisible memories that you didn't know you had can awaken old associations. Priming is often how you jog your memory. This kind of recall is sometimes referred to as context-dependent memory. Say you're reading in bed, and you want to underline a quote, but you don't have a pen. Well, you get up and you go to the other room to find your special light-up Hello Kitty pen, but you get distracted and suddenly you find yourself in the kitchen. You're like, why mind? Why am I in the kitchen? What is here? Why am there was and I don't know, but I'm here now, and it's only when you retrace your steps and return to bed to the initial context where you read that quote and encoded that first thought of wanting that pen that the memory comes back. And then you're like, oh, I need to go get the pen.
Okay. Okay. Andrew, man, I got a ton of things to ask you, but first, let me tell the folks who you are. And before I even do that, I want to give full disclosure to my amazing audience. Andrew and I have known each other, oh my God, forever. I want to say almost 20 years.
I think that's
so
right.
That's the reason why because it is not uncommon when I've had medical professionals on, I've referred to them as doctor. But that would be odd with you, man. So let me read your bio, Andrew. All right. I'll pull it up right here. Dr. Andrew Budson, Dr. Andrew E. Budson is the Director of Education at the Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and Professor of Neurology at Boston University. He is also the Chief of Cognitive Behavioral Neurology at the Veterans Affairs Boston Healthcare System. His current research uses the techniques of experimental psychology, cognitive neuroscience, experimental psychology and cognitive neuroscience to understand memory in patients with Alzheimer's disease. Another thing, because Andrew, as if you're not busy enough, you have co-authored and edited 6 books, including 6 Steps to Managing Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia, A Guide for Families, and your new book called Why We Forget and How to Remember Better, The Science Behind Memory, which is shameless plug. But let's so, watching that video clip, the first thought that came to my mind, okay? And by the way, again, to the audience out there, if you have a question, remember, this is a dialogue. It's not a monologue. If you got a question of Andrew, throw it in the chat, put it up there, and I'll read it to him. And if you don't want to use your name, that's cool. But so Andrew, let's jump in right off the bat. What is memory?
Yeah, so I love that little video, although that guy talks really fast. and, and I actually have a slightly better metaphor. I don't think of memories as a spider web in the corners of your mind. The way my colleague Elizabeth Kensinger and I think about memories, we think about building a structure. So when you are experiencing an event for your life, what is actually being recorded is you're making like a blueprint of the structure. And that is what a part of your brain that's deep in the temporal lobes called the hippocampus is doing. It makes a blueprint. And so when we retrieve a memory, what happens is we rebuild that structure from the blueprint. And that is sort of how we're able to remember things.
Okay, so let me piggyback on that. And I love that idea of the blueprint. So let me piggyback. And I know I'm not the only one that has had this happen. I will hear a song. I will know all the words to that song. I will be singing that song all day long in my head. And I can't remember who in the heck sang that song to save my life until like 1 o'clock in the morning when I'll go like, yeah, Smokey Robinson. and so all I could think is that the song is the blueprint, but I can't quite figure out, and correct me if I'm wrong, how I labeled the blueprint, which would be the name of the singer.
Right, and that's because when you're listening to the song, each part of the song is linked to the next part, whether it's the melody or the words. But the name Smokey Robinson, it's not part of that chain. It's sort of like in a separate place. And if you were like me, and I know you are, that you grew up listening to songs on the radio, right? Where it's like the name wasn't necessarily there until the announcer says it at the end, and you might have missed it, you were driving or not paying attention or something like that. So, you heard that song 100, 1,000 times, but the name only probably, a couple dozen times.
Okay, so that leads to my first question. How does memory work in our brains? Is it like, now I'm going to date myself, is it like back in the day when we were listening to the radio and we would get our cassette recorder and we'd record that song? Is memory a recording?
Yeah. So the first thing that happens when we're going to form a memory is our frontal lobes right behind our forehead have to pay attention to whatever it is that we are going to be remembering. And it's actually the frontal lobes that are helping our hippocampus to make that blueprint. And then later, when we want to retrieve a memory, it often takes effort. And again, the reason it takes effort is because our frontal lobes have to find the blueprint that we're looking for, and then it needs to be actively reassembled.
All right. So you just answered a question that wasn't asked, which is, how can it be that this happens a lot? Someone will be talking, and then they'll say, "Don't you remember I told you that?" And the reality is, I wasn't paying attention, so my frontal tempo didn't do its job. But is that safe to say?
Absolutely. You know, that's exactly right. In fact, what happens to me all the time is I go to a cocktail party and I meet someone and they introduce themselves to me and they say their name, but I'm like paying attention to, like, you know, the atmosphere and what they just told me and other sorts of things, and I haven't paid attention to their name. And then bam, it's gone and I've missed it. And it's very embarrassing. Here I am, like a memory doctor, memory expert, and I've just forgotten that person's name. So I totally get it.
We both have the same experience. I've gotten comfortable now when I'm doing just that in a room full of folks or giving a talk, and I tell people, you'll notice I didn't ask you for your name, because the reality is I'm not able to remember it, because we meet so many people. So I always say, but Andrew, hold on a second. But here's the weird thing, because I follow it up by saying, when we run into each other again, remind me where we met, because ironically that cues me to, oh, this is Bob, and we met at the social blah blah blah. I can remember all of that, and again, that goes back to that blueprint. I can remember all of that once you remind me of where we met. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it was one of the things that was in that little preview video that we saw, that the context in which we learned a memory is very important. And what you have just said that you do, you know, out of something you learned, is exactly what we teach people to do, is to think about, you know, another piece of information about the person if you're hoping their name will pop to mind. So it could be where we've met you, where you've met them. It could also be something else about them. You may remember their occupation. You may remember something they told you about their children. And any of those additional details will help you remember their name.
So since we're talking again about forgetting and memory, why do we forget? And I'm going to piggyback on that. And why are some things more forgettable than others?
Yeah. So we tend to remember the things that are important to us, and things can be important to us for a lot of different reasons. Our brain knows that things that we have a strong emotion about are often important to us. And for that reason, things that have strong emotions are often better remembered. Now, so that I've answered the second part of your question. Why are some things easier to remember than others? But the answer to the first part of the question, it has to do with the fact that if you were able to remember not only what you did yesterday and what you ate for lunch yesterday and what you were wearing yesterday, but also every single day last week and every single day last month and every single day last year and for the last 10 years, you would have so much clutter in your memory that you would never be able to pull out the important memories that you want to remember. So it's very important that we forget. It's probably like 99% of what goes on every day. Otherwise, we would never be able to remember the things that are important to us.
So you just touched on something which I have been saying forever. And a dear friend, Dr. Paul Rea, who also has been on the show, we talked about this, the difference between emotional memory and historical memory. And I know I've given an example, I've done it a million times, of I'm still able to remember my first real kiss. And I'm right down to the moment, the song, what she was wearing, even the perfume. But I realized that that's all historical. but the emotional part of that kiss, as I tend to say, if I ever got Alzheimer's, all of that date, time, place, her name, all of that goes away. But that emotional part, and as I like to say, that part that's in your heart, as I jokingly say, if I'm ever outside on a warm day and someone wearing Jean Naté perfume walks by and a particular song is playing, I won't know why, but emotionally, I'm the happiest man in the world at that moment. So let's talk about the difference between that emotional memory and the historical memory.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting distinction. And I think the reason that they're so different is there's actually different structures in the brain that are responsible for remembering that different part of information. There is a little structure in the brain that looks like an almond, and amygdala is simply Latin for almond. So we call it the amygdala. That is what stores the emotional memories, which I sort of like because, you can think of yourself eating some almonds, and that's an emotional, hopefully pleasant experience. And so that's where that sort of, say, pleasureful feeling when you smell the perfume and you hear the music, that's where it comes out. And then the sort of dates and times and context and things like that are not necessarily tied into the emotion, that is stored above that amygdala structure in the top layers of the brain called the cortex. Cortex actually means bark, like the bark of a tree. So the cortex, again, it's just Latin for the outer coating of the brain. So the amygdala, the almond, is what stores the emotions, and the cortex, the bark of the brain, is what stores all those contextual details.
I'm going to steal that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that,
Yeah.
explanation.
So the reason that Alzheimer's affects all the details is because Alzheimer's affects the cortex more than it does the amygdala.
The almond.
We
got a question.
right. You can call it the almond. The bark and the almond.
Don't try and get me confused. The bark and the almond. I got a question from the audience. What percentage of our brain do we use for memory, and could we ever run out of space? Like a computer. Computers. Yeah. I remember years ago, I bought my first computer, which was super duper fast until my kids discovered games and downloaded 1 million games, and then it used up a lot of space. So what percentage of our brain do we use for memory, and can we run out of space? And you kind of talked about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I bet that just about all of us have had the experience where we have run out of space temporarily. Has somebody ever thrown out a bunch of words? Let's say you're learning a foreign language and someone wants to teach you one word in a day. You say, "Oh, I can learn one word." And then they say, "Okay, well, how about learning 10 words?" You say, "I can learn 10 words." How about 100 words or 1,000 words, or 1,000,000 words? Like, wait a minute, that's too much. And it turns out that we do have a finite capacity of how much we can learn of any one subject or topic each day. And then we go to bed and we sleep. And when we sleep, what happens is the hippocampus, that structure we talked about before, takes the memories we learned during the day and it puts it out to the bark of the brain, the cortex. And then the hippocampus is ready the next morning to learn new information.
Okay. So the hippocampus is like the librarian who goes through the books.
Yeah. And I think as long as you think about the hippocampus as the librarian carrying a certain number of books, and they can only carry so many books, you know,
Yep.
but then they put them on the shelves, and then they're ready to carry more books.
And I love this conversation. This is the first conversation we've ever had about just memory. And you always hear about people with photographic memories. And that seems kind of freaky. That I mean, don't get me wrong. I can pull up in my head the album cover, the Jackson 5's first album, ABC. And I mean, I can picture it perfectly in my head. Now, ask me to tell you the title of the first paper I had to write, I'm in trouble. So let's talk about that photographic memory. How does that work?
So the first thing that I hope you'll be sort of happy or perhaps relieved to hear is nobody really has a photographic memory. There are not people who would sort of glance at a page and remember it, 10 years from now. But there are people who have very good memories. And most of those people are particularly good about a certain thing. So, for example, studies have shown that a chess master can simply glance at a chessboard and remember that chessboard. And you might say, wow, well, that's pretty cool. And it is cool. But what they found is that chess player, when you test them with, say, a list of words or people's faces and names, they're not any better than anybody else. And if you give that chess master pieces on a chessboard that are sort of random, pieces that could not have been placed there as part of a game, they are no better than anybody else at remembering that. Now, so we all have developed expertise for things that we know and are important to us. And so for myself, I'll just say, I am actually quite good at remembering a history that a patient tells me, or the details of an experiment, because as a doctor and a scientist, I do those things day in and day out and have done them for now about over 30 years.
Right. So it's like with me back in my old social worker days, I could remember a client's file.
Exactly.
But their name? Yeah. So
well, that's because it's on a different part of the blueprint.
There you go. And for my audience members out there that have already Googled this, the Jackson 5's first album was Diana Ross Presents. The second album was ABC. But that's just me showing off my geekiness. All right, Andrew, this is time for a shameless plug. About your book, you talk about false memories. Is that, I keep hearing this thing called the Mandela effect or something like that. But it's interesting. Recently, I was having a conversation with an old friend, and I shared with her an experience that we had back when we were teenagers, and she said, "Mike, it didn't happen like that." And I of course deferred to her, but I found myself going, "Okay, did I get that totally wrong?" So let's talk about false memories.
Yeah.
Because how can a memory be wrong? That's where I'm going.
Yeah. So the first thing that's super interesting about false memories and how it sort of ties into what we're talking about is every time that you retrieve a memory and you rebuild that memory structure from the blueprint, what happens is the blueprint gets rewritten with how you've remembered it. So if you remember a detail wrong, what happens is that wrong detail gets incorporated into the memory. And then when you bring that memory up, it has that wrong detail. And then if another error occurs, then that incorrect piece of information. And the reason I'm drawing circles is it's a cycle. And every time you retrieve the memory, more errors can creep into it. It's like that game that we all used to play called telephone, where you'd
Telephone.
say a sentence to somebody next to you and you'd go around in the circle and you'd hear what the sentence was at the end, and it's often like totally changed. So that can happen to our memories. And you're very smart to defer to your friend with their recollection, because and now all of you know, that it's very easy for errors to creep into our memories.
So let's talk about I guess where I'm going with this is, do you need an independent eyewitness to validate a true memory as opposed to I don't want to call it a false memory, because it's not actually false. It's just been rewritten.
Well, it might be a sort of true for you, but it's not true for what actually happened, like if there was an actual video recording of the event. And the way you can distinguish it is most importantly by evaluating the details. Are the details of the memory crisp and bright and clearly envisioned, or are they sort of vague and fuzzy? If they're vague and fuzzy, they might not really have happened that way. The other things that you can take a look at is, if you know any external facts, you can use that to check them, just like you checked, for example, Jackson 5's first album, right? You can check things externally. And then the last thing that we recommend for people to distinguish between true memories and false memories is to think about, well, how well should I know that? So if a friend is telling you, we ate once together in the, high school cafeteria, and you're like, well, I ate in the high school cafeteria, like every school day for 4 years. Sure, we might have eaten there once. But if your friend said, we once ate together on the front lawn in the White House in Washington, D.C., you would be like, I think if I ate lunch on the front lawn of the White House, I would have remembered that. So the fact that I can't remember that must be false.
That's a little bit of we'll just call it lying. One of the things that we haven't done, and I'm a big proponent of this, is we talk about Alzheimer's and we talk about dementia. So Andrew, if you would please, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Sure. So dementia is a general term that simply means that thinking and memory has deteriorated to the point that it interferes with day-to-day function. And Alzheimer's is one type or one cause of dementia.
Okay. Are there other types of dementia or disorders that can affect your memory, negatively?
Absolutely. So Alzheimer's, if you look under the microscope, you can see there are these abnormal proteins that form these plaques and these tangles. And then there's other things that can happen to the brain that can also interfere with thinking and memory. So one of those can be strokes. Another one can be other abnormal proteins. And sometimes the abnormal proteins affect behaviors and they affect the frontal lobes, and we call that frontal lobe dementia. Sometimes the proteins can cause the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and we call that Parkinson's dementia, or sometimes dementia with Lewy bodies, because of the name of the abnormal protein that collects in the cell. And there's a few rarer types of dementia as well.
And so speaking of which, something that I've learned over the years is that, and that's why I asked you, thank you for that distinction between what is dementia and what is Alzheimer's, and mentioning all those other diseases. because I mean, I've heard over the years that there's some types of dementia that are reversible. Medication that is mismanaged, for example, coming out of anesthesia, symptoms of dementia.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is one of many reasons that if someone is experiencing memory loss or they see it in a loved one, they should go to their doctor and get it checked out because it could be the side effect of a medication. It could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be a thyroid disorder. And there's a lot of other reversible causes of dementia. So I want to make sure anyone out there who is having memory trouble or sees it in a loved one, don't stick your head in the sand. Don't ignore it. Go to your doctor, get it checked out. Even if it's Alzheimer's, there's things that we can do to help.
And I'm trying to find a delicate way to dance around this question. So I've got to ask the question. Are there ways to improve your memory besides taking a supplement that may get advertised a lot?
Yeah. So supplements that get advertised a lot on TV don't work, and we don't recommend them. Okay. So let's just say that right off the bat. So there are a lot of things that people can do without any medications to improve their memory. We want people to eat right. We want people to exercise, just like we did with J. Lou. We want people to be social and interact. And now that the pandemic is winding down, we want people to start interacting in person. And there's also 4 memory strategies that we recommend in this book. And we've made a little acronym, which is the word FOUR, F-O-U-R, to help everyone remember them. We want you to focus your attention. We want you to organize what you're trying to remember into a natural group or cluster. We want you to understand whatever it is you're trying to remember. And we want you to relate it to things that you already know. So focus, organize, understand, and relate. F-O-U-R.
I like that. All right, you know what? If I'm at home watching this on the internet, I'm asking this question: what about doing crossword puzzles, or Sudoku, or we hear about exercising the brain?
Yeah. So Mike has heard me talk about crossword puzzles and Sudoku for a long time, and my standard line has been for years that if you spend time doing crossword puzzles and Sudoku, you will get better at crossword puzzles and Sudoku. But there has just been a recent study that compared learning crossword puzzles and learning computerized brain training games. And this study was sponsored by the makers of the computerized brain training games. And they expected that the computerized brain training games would be better than the crossword puzzles. It turns out it was the other way around. The crossword puzzles were actually better for improving your performance on standard cognitive tests compared to the computerized brain training games. So it turns out that crossword puzzles are actually good for your brain. And the reason that we think that they are is that they often do stretch you to make you make new connections in the brain that you otherwise would not have made. So it turns out that this old example that I have been using for years is actually good for you.
Well, you know this. I hate crossword puzzles. So for me, doing a crossword puzzle is harder than a J. Lou workout. But Andrew, I go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you don't like crossword puzzles and other people listening don't like crossword puzzles, if you do something new and novel with your brain, with your mind, something that stretches yourself, something that pulls you out of your normal comfort zone, that is the key. So it doesn't need to be crossword puzzles.
See, that's exercising our brain. Andrew, you were on one of our earlier episodes where it was a tape segment, and this is oh so much more. As I always say, this is the fastest 15, 20 minutes on television, internet, whatever. So, Andrew, let's wrap up. I'm going to ask you a question. And I ask this question of all my guests, but I'm going to tweak this. Normally I ask, is there something you want folks to remember, take home, from this conversation, if they don't remember anything else? But today I'm going to tweak it by saying, is there something about memory that you would like folks, if they don't remember anything else about our conversation, what would that one thing be about memory?
The one thing is that I think we often feel that if learning is coming easy to us, we're going to be able to remember what we've learned quite well. But in fact, it's usually the opposite. What the studies show is the more effort that we need to put into learning something, the better we will remember it in the future. So if you're struggling to remember something, if you're working hard at it, that's good. That's means good. It's likely going to stick.
All right. Andrew, I got to bring you back. You got to be an annual guest live because this is so much more fun than you did taping it.
It would be my pleasure. I have another book coming out that we can talk about next time.
You are a busy man. All right, Dr. Andrew Budson, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And I think I'll see you next month when I swing by the clinic. Take care, my friend.
A pleasure to chat with you today.
All right. So, one of the coolest things about having a show like this is being able to bring on friends and just have conversations that you miss having. And so I want to thank Andrew and his crew at BU for just hanging out. So this is the time in the program. You guys know this. It's time for our poll. So let's, Alexa, let's throw the poll up on there and see how folks do. True or false? Oh, 50-50. Forgetting is a sign that something is wrong. True or false? Forgetting is a sign that something is wrong. And remember, we talked about all different types of forgetting. We talked about, going into the room to get something and then forgetting what you went in there for. One of the things that Andrew didn't talk about is forgetting where you put stuff. So true or false, forgetting is a sign that something is wrong, and 100% of you got this one right. The answer is false. Forgetting is not a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes forgetting means you just weren't paying attention. and as somebody that happens to quite often, it's nice to know I'm normal. And that was pretty cool. All right. I want to go to some resources. So Alexa, let's throw up some resources and then I'll come back with my closing comment. Because we've got a lot of terrific things, some things that are happening. Again, some resources that folks can go to. The folks at the Cleveland Alzheimer's Disease Research Center are presenting their Black History Month webinars. I got an opportunity last year to pop in and check out some of the webinars, and they were amazing. So if you get a chance, and the link is up there, you can scan the thing with the phone, or you can put in the link. They ask that you register and come check them out. I'm quite sure you will be surprised. This year's topics are controlling health risk factors in the African American community and stress in the African American community. Both of them are two-part series. Come check them out. I'm quite sure, as I said, I got a chance last year. It was very informative. And you don't necessarily have to live in Cleveland to be able to relate to what they're talking about. We got Andrew and Liz's book, Why We Forget and How to Remember, the science behind memory. Yeah, Alexa, I think next time we should bring Andrew and Liz on. Give Liz a little bit of love too. Give her a shout out. But we got, those are some of the things that are happening. So, my closing thought, and I'm thinking about memory. And I was so glad to have Andrew here for us to talk about the difference between historical and emotional memory. And some of you have heard me say this before. In fact, I remember one of our first episodes, we had a picture. It was an elderly man holding the wife of the hand of an elderly woman, and they were walking down the street. And someone said to him, she appears that she doesn't recognize who you are. Does that make you feel bad? And his response was, and I'll never forget this, she may not remember me, but I remember that she is and always will be the love of my life. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an emotional memory that will never go away. And she will always know, she may not remember his name, but she'll remember that he loves her. And that, that is just something. So today's episode was hopeful. It wasn't gloom and doom. It was the fact that, we forget things. And why we forget things, and then how we remember them. And I just want everybody to know that it's all good. It's all good. So this is the beginning of our new year. Our next show is, I believe, right after Valentine's Day. We're looking at doing a show on caregiving. And just, for people, if you know somebody who's caring for somebody or a loved one with Alzheimer's, tell them about the show. Tune in for the show. Bring some questions for the show, because we're going to have some amazing guests, and we're going to talk about what to expect as a caregiver, how to start putting your ducks in order as a caregiver, and how to survive caring and loving somebody who's living with Alzheimer's disease or some type of dementia. That's it for me. My name is Mike Kincaid. This is Brain Info Live, the New England version. Thank you for hanging out with me, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you around the neighborhood. Bye-bye.